Tom Lee believes that Bitcoin will hit $150,000 this year. And Aaron Ross Sorkin and Joe Kernan have another heated debate live on air. But Jeff Booth proves to be an even bigger bull than Lee, with an astronomical price prediction that you won't believe. Plus, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson asked to get paid in Bitcoin? Is Europe on the brink of another banking crisis? Also, Jeff Bezos sells $8.5 billion worth of his Amazon shares. Is he getting out because he knows something that the rest of the market doesn't? What's he buying? Stick around and find out in today's episode. Welcome to the Wednesday, February 21st edition of the Bitcoin Daily Show. I'm Dante Cook, head of Swan Business. Here at Swan, we're on a mission to educate the world about Bitcoin, so please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It will help us cut through the noise here on YouTube and teach more people about Bitcoin. And again, if you have questions, feel free to send us an email at daily@swanbitcoin.com. Aaron Ross Sorkin dips to a new low, comparing Bitcoin to porn.
So you ascribe nothing to the idea that Bitcoin is a beloved currency for those who are trying to do nefarious things?
Well, here's a way to think of it. Criminals don't trust anybody, but they trust Bitcoin. And so if you want to say what is a trusted asset, it's really what would be the least trustworthy currency.
This is like saying you follow the technology that starts with PORN. Right?
No, I think
because that's.
I think it's like.
Right. I remember like videotapes and this.
It's like blaming the object for itself for the nefarious behavior when it's the humans that are using that.
I'm really impressed with his creativity. His finesse and ability to attack Bitcoin in different ways is more impressive than Kyrie Irving's layup package, and that's saying something. As a parent, I can relate to Ross. You know when you and your significant other are arguing about something in front of the kids and you know they can't spell? And he'd be like, hey, babe, BTC, PORN is bad. And then your daughter looks over like, Daddy, what's bad? And you're like, nothing, baby. Keep eating your food.
You take a car or a truck.
No, of course, but some have more utility. No, but this is the difference, and I will take Gary Gensler's side on this particular description of the situation.
Yeah.
A car has immense value to society, economic value to society. There's a utility case.
But why doesn't it resonate with you?
You could argue that a strong Tylenol actually has a
but in the history of the world,
utility.
In the history of the world,
right?
If 99% of the nefarious activities were using dollars, why don't you have the same negative viewpoint towards a dollar?
Because it has a great utility in the same way the car has a great utility.
Well, because you don't appreciate the utility of Bitcoin doesn't mean that other people don't appreciate it.
The only people right now that appreciate
No, that's not true. That's not true. I don't appreciate it because I'm using it for ransomware. I appreciate it because it's a store of value. I don't appreciate it.
A store of value or
it's a store of value, not speculative.
That goes up. If it was a store of value, it would stay one price.
No. Like gold was $300 not too long ago.
Look, I have a hard time debating somebody whose eyes get as big as Jim Carrey's in the Mask movie. But honestly, Andrew, a store of value staying the same price? What about your house? Isn't that a store of value? The actual definition of a store of value is something that outpaces or keeps pace with inflation. So of course, the price of Bitcoin is going to change. And let me say this first to Dana White or Joe Rogan or whoever's promoting the MMA these days. I want to be on the front row for this cage match between Joe Kernan and Andrew Ross Sorkin. I'm going to be in the front row like Michael Jackson with some popcorn. On to some news from the ETF front. Yesterday, we saw net inflows across all of the issuers of 136 million. This is after an offset of 157 million from GBTC outflows. Overall, the ETFs have attracted more than $5 billion in inflow since they launched. What was most impressive about yesterday was that there were over $2 billion in trading volume, the most since the first day the ETFs launched. You can go down some rabbit holes on Twitter, but there are some people that are speculating that algorithms were buying the dips, specifically of HODL, VanEck ETF fund. Another interesting note that we want to keep an eye on, although it's been consistent with outflows from the last couple of days, GBTC had outflows of 137 million. We do believe, from what we called last week, that the Genesis bankruptcy liquidation is having an impact on these GBTC outflows, which were decreasing rapidly before the judge approved that. Okay, let's go back to the CNBC interview with Tom Lee. and hear why he believes that Bitcoin will reach a price of $150,000 this year.
I said, and I was just throwing out a number. We're at 50. I said, what? He said it might be strong for the remainder of the year.
Yes.
I said 75. What did you say to me?
I think it's, could be as high as 150,000 this year.
So double what I thought was.
Yeah.
150,000, so we're tripling at this point.
Yeah, because you've got demand improving with the ETF, and you have the supply shrinking with the halvening. And if monetary policy eases, which we expect, that's supportive of risk assets. And Bitcoin's holding up. That's another reason why I don't think a drawdown is going to start that soon. Bitcoin's been rallying the last couple weeks.
Wow. So take that to the bank.
Those are big numbers. I don't know anymore.
And are you in, hold on, let me just go back. Are you in the camp of this is like a $500,000 valued?
Over the next...
Over 5 years, are you?
Yeah, it is sound money. And I think it's proving to be useful. And
Proving to be useful how?
Well,
it's very useful if you're an investor right now.
Yes, it's been a great store of value. It's been a good risk asset. It's also incredibly secure. There hasn't been a single fraudulent entry on the blockchain since inception. I don't think any bank can say that's true of their P&L and accounting. 6% of banking transactions are suspicious, 0% on the Bitcoin.
He has a pretty simple formula. He's looking at an increase in demand from the ETFs or other buying that happens during a bull market. He's looking at the supply shrinking with the halving coming up here in April. And he's also looking at monetary easing from the Fed potentially later this year. Other than Tom Lee, you get this price prediction as well from Jeff Booth, an acclaimed author in the Bitcoin space, who claims that Bitcoin is fundamentally mispriced because it's not priced in all of the total assets in the world, which he values at $900 trillion.
So what's different here is the $900 trillion of global wealth. Imagine you have a percentage of that ledger, right? And you could say, if Mark Moss has $1 million, you could just calculate exactly what percent you have of that ledger. If that ledger is 1.5 quadrillion tomorrow, because there's a whole bunch more manipulation of money, and your part of that ledger doesn't go up by that amount, you lost money, but you didn't know you lost money.
Sure.
That's what you're living in. And that's what everyone is pricing theirs in. And when they naturally say, what is Bitcoin price in this ledger? They're making that calculation error. When I say it's saying decentralized and secure on the base ledger, then it is inevitable if it stays decentralized and secure. It reprices everything in the 900 trillion. So you could say, how much of a percentage of 21 million do I have for all of time? And compare and contrast how much do you need for your lifestyle. If you can hold it decentralized and secure, it will reprice everything else.
He believes that Bitcoin reprices everything when you compare it to all other assets, which brings us to a price of about $42 million per Bitcoin. Are you bullish enough? In other news, remember when Jerome Powell came on 60 Minutes a few weeks ago to talk about the fiscal irresponsibility of Congress?
In the long run, the U.S. is on an unsustainable fiscal path. The U.S. federal government's on an unsustainable fiscal path. And that just means that the debt is growing faster than the economy.
Well, I think we know why he was talking about that. According to Lynn Alden, our fiscal deficits are structurally larger than the rate of bank lending and are set to grow in perpetuity. And so fiscal details tend to matter more than monetary ones. So if the government continues to print money without any controls in place, this limits the Fed's ability to enact policy to drive change in the markets. And as you can see in this next chart from Lynn, like any drug, over time, there's diminishing returns. We're printing more money than ever, and it's having a smaller and smaller impact cumulatively. If you want to get more insights like this, sign up for our free webinar with Lynn Alden tomorrow, Thursday, February 22nd at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Lynn is one of the most brilliant minds in the world on the macroeconomy and money itself. If you haven't checked out our new book, Broken Money, go do so. Should we give a book to Andrew Ross Sorkin? There's a link to sign up for the webinar in the show notes. Also, you can also click the link right here on the screen in order to sign up for the free webinar with Lynn tomorrow. Let's get into some international macro news. You want to know when someone's cooking is bad? When you give it to a dog and the dog won't eat it. You want to know when your currency's bad? When your former prime minister will accept gold, Bitcoin, or dollars before he accepts his local currency.
For an interview with Boris Johnson, as I have many times because he's constantly denouncing me as a tool of the Kremlin, he says no. So I'm thinking about myself getting more annoyed. So I know a lot of people who know Boris Johnson. So I reach out to them. Finally, one of his advisors gets back to me and says, he will talk to you, but it's going to cost you $1 million. He wants $1 million in US dollars, gold, or Bitcoin. No, this just happened.
Boris Johnson asked to be paid in Bitcoin over the British pound. Bad cooking, anybody? And another example of garbage currency, the Nigerian central bank ordered Binance to set a cap on USDT sellers on its platform. This meant that Nigerian citizens could not sell their USDT tokens for more than $1,802 per naira. What's interesting to note here is that although the government came down with this policy or tried to work with Binance behind closed doors, traders took to Telegram and other platforms to begin creating their own market when the government tried to limit theirs. Citizens will find new ways to trade and new exits to leave if you try to close the doors on them. Let's head over to Europe real quick. There seems to be some contagion brewing, specifically in German regional banks. The price of the bond of the Ariel Bank in Germany completely collapsed. This comes after the stock being delisted from the Frankfurt Stock Exchange in just November of last year. Why is this important? As we've been saying all along on this show, if you've been following consistently, the effects of the U.S. commercial real estate market will have broad impacts globally. U.S. office buildings are overlevered and underutilized because of the shift that happened during the pandemic of people working from home. This is driving demand through the floor and vacancy rates through the roof. Vacancies in major U.S. markets now sit above 20%. How does this affect the Ariel Bank in Germany? Well, it's because U.S. commercial real estate accounted for over 15% of their lending books. So now that these U.S. commercial real estate buildings are beginning to trade hands at 40, 50, 60% of the value of which they were bought at, these loans now have to be marked at their real value and not just what they had on paper. It's for this reason specifically that credit agencies downgraded the Ariel Bank and other banks in Germany. Who will be the next dominoes to fall? Deutsche Bank? Bayern? Overall, the fiat financial system is starting to crumble, and the smart money is starting to get out while they have a chance. Jeff Bezos has sold $8.5 billion worth of Amazon stock in the last 2 weeks. And what's he buying? Bitcoin, gold, and farmland, probably. The amount of farmland bought by investment firms and private equity has jumped 231% since the great financial crisis in 2008. Everybody is starting to wake up and smell what The Rock is cooking. Do you smell that?
You smell that? What is that?
What?
What's that smell?
The cologne?
No.
Opportunity.
That's right. An opportunity. An opportunity to buy Bitcoin. And you know what? You don't have to go all in. Start small, but just start. 94% of long-term holders in Bitcoin are now in a profit. And according to Lynn, who we talked about earlier, if you're not all in, it means that you're actually more bullish on the price of Bitcoin long-term.
But I think you can be bullish without being all in. And in some ways that makes you more bullish because you're basically saying, I don't need to be all in because if I expect Bitcoin to do the price action I do, it won't really matter if I'm 25% in, 50% in, or 75% in. It's going to do well if I'm even directionally correct on the importance of this technology.
It means that if Bitcoin's price runs the way that you think that it will, it's going to have a larger impact and percentage of your portfolio relative to other things. So you don't need to overweight on Bitcoin because Bitcoin's going to do what Bitcoin does, baby. But this isn't a show about telling you what to buy. The first investment you should always make, what you're doing by watching this show, is in your own education. I think one of the best ways to do that is by tuning in to our free webinar tomorrow with Lynn Alden. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. She's one of the brightest minds in the world on this stuff, and you're going to learn a lot about how to allocate your capital and position your portfolio for this next market coming up. I'll see you at 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Until then, I'm going to be hooping in my Swan jersey and practicing my layups like Kyrie Irving. This is Dante Cook with Swan.com. Happy stacking.